All right. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whenever and whatever time you're watching this and receiving this. We want to thank you for spending your time to just kind of dive deep into our webinar for today. This is our seventh or eighth. We're approaching the end of our webinar series with MLK through Queen Anne and Zinga Center, and it has been awesome just to see the different types of um the different types of information that we were able to get and put together for you guys. This one today is very important and impactful. I'll be giving the presentation. So my name is Trey Tucker for those who weren't there in the early beginning stages. One of the hosts as well as Yatina. And today we're gonna just talk about a little parent advocation advocacy, I'm sorry, what it means and how you can do it as a parent. This is not as extensive in information, but it is very helpful. As I was going through putting this together, just wanted to make it as less stressful for parents to want to learn how to advocate. So without further ado, let's get started. So first is our agenda. So here's our agenda for today. So we're going to talk about empowering parents, what that looks like, why advocacy matters, knowing your rights in school, navigating through school procedures, some resources for the parents, as well as taking action. So empowering parents is very important when it comes to advocacy, but a lot of times, as parents, we may not know how to or might not know what the results will be or can be based on how we feel empowered and how we advocate. Sorry, I'm just turning my phone off. Um, but let's start with the first point, which is a higher academic achievement. So, studies show that students with engaged parents tend to perform better academically. And as we go along, everything kind of ties to each other. So it starts to make sense why these are factors. So higher academic achievement with parents that are involved normally includes parents knowing what is going on in their schools. A lot of times it may seem simple or something that's not as a big of a deal, but there's a lot of times where students in the parent don't really connect and don't speak to each other or don't know what's going on in the school, don't know how to do the math or what is being assigned if their student is capable to do the work. So empowering parents is just as a parent, just um knowing why this is important to you, knowing how this can benefit your child, and a happier child academically has plenty of opportunities such as scholarships and grants and things of that nature where they'll be able to find themselves in better positioning when they graduate. So better communication with educators. So a lot of times parents and educators or parents may feel as if you're only hearing information from the child from the child's parent the child's teacher, I'm sorry, and not reaching out, or sometimes we're very reactive, which we'll get into as we go on further slides. But you can develop a relationship with the parents, things such as parent teacher conferences and just simply being in contact. I know there's an app that the parents use, so it's just simply being in contact with your teachers, your administrators, your principals, and just saying hi. It doesn't even have to start with wanting to know and needing to know, but just building a strong foundation and a strong relationship allows for more leeway with things and more tools that you would have as a parent or as a guardian. So an informed parent builds stronger relationships with teachers, administrators, leading to more collaborative problem solving. So as we get further in the presentation, um, collaborative problem solving is very important because we don't want to be reactive. We don't want to have to hear that our student is failing a class before we figure out how to get them back on the right track. So, as an empowered parent, just knowing what's going on in the school, knowledge is power. It's very important. So, that's one of the points. And the last one for empowering parents, just your student will have greater confidence. Nothing feels better as a student, when I was a student, was knowing that I had a solid foundation that supported me and backed me, even when I didn't know what was going on, even when I was lost or I needed guidance, knowing that I was able to reach out to my direct sources like my parents, and then my family, my uncles, my aunts. So creating that foundation and making sure that the student is shelled with information coming from both sides, from the school as well as the parent in the home, create a greater confidence for the student. They want to show up more. They want to be more involved in school. It makes them feel empowered. So when parents are knowledgeable about school procedures, children feel more supported and empowered. And at the end of the day, we're here because we want the best education and the best outcome for our children and for other children. So it's creating a village essentially that will help um, move forward. So I collected a chart that kind of just breaks down the type of impact. And I won't go through all of it, but it asks what does high impact family engagement look like in elementary schools? And it breaks it down from high impact to moderate to low. So the first one, as far as engagement, right? Things like back to school night, class meetings, where the parents and teachers get to sit down and talk. Sharing learning strategies. You might not know as a parent what could work or what may work, but there's never been an issue with being curious and sharing information that you thought would benefit your child. So, sharing new strategies, reviewing key skills that your student does at home. So the things that your child is interested in. Sometimes if there's a disconnect between the communication with the parents and the school, the school might not know what the student is truly interested in. So that's where the home piece comes along, and developing communication plans. So figuring out, if my child is not doing what they're supposed to be doing, you have all free way to call me, or if they're doing well, getting pictures, things of that nature is high impact on student learning and development. So there's no mishaps from home to the school. Moderate is parents taking tours of the school, sitting down and talking with the teachers. Um, Classroom visits to meet teachers. So it's not as inclusive, as involved, but you still have an idea what's going on. And on the lower side of the impact is just going to these things, sitting in front of a panel of speakers, listening to them speak about things that could be very helpful. Passing out student handbooks or receiving them and reading through student handbooks. So these are some ways that there's a whole list that you'll be able to kind of go through. But it doesn't have to start off on a negative foot before you start to get to know your teacher or your administrator or your principals or the people that support you. Things like these are very helpful with relationship building, and that's all we want to do, because we're a community. So as a community, we're meant to work together. And this is a nice chart that kind of shows what family involvement looks like, what family engagement looks like, and how connecting with families can be very beneficial. So I know there's a lot of parents that live within the community of other parents that have kids that go to the same school. So things like connecting with other families, like we'll start in the middle, improves reading and math outcomes. Families are more confident with advocates. So there's strength in numbers. If you know that there are other parents that may be more informed, or parents are not equally informed and they want to learn together, there's always strength in community versus doing it in isolation. Remember, this is a community and this is a village. We're not trying to we're trying to build across and build together, not trying to put other people down while we do that. So some of these things, like families are more confident advocates, which attributes to higher learning, and children are engaged. Children of engaged families have higher attendance, higher social skills, and lower aggressive behaviors. A lot of times, our students, we see that they act out in a form of maybe not being heard, seen, or felt, and a lot of times that comes with a disconnect. So if we're able to identify what that is as educators as well as parents, there's less of that happening, and more of positive behaviors and positive reinforcements that we're looking for with our children. So, just a little difference between family involvement and family engagement. So, doing two versus doing with, right? Telling families about practices and authentic co-creation. So helping curate and helping be a part of those things, right? Family involvement also looks like fundraisers, being a part of bingo nights. And I know MLK has wonderful family involved activities and events that they have throughout the whole year, and they've been working well to do that. So being knowledgeable of when these things happen, right? So family engagement is including family members. So as a mom, you're inviting your uncles, your brothers, your sisters, your grandparents, your mom, you're inviting everyone so everyone knows what's going on within this student's circle, right? You're creating a wonderful bubble of positive reinforcement that this child will have resources to reach out to, not only within the school, but outside of their school. And we want to make sure we're curating that environment, right? So the last one I'll speak on from this page, just involvement takes place in school buildings and not in homes and community. That's family involvement, right? That's involvement. But family engagement is schools lead with its ears, listening to what families think, dream, and worry about, right? So when your family's engaged, there's a higher chance of your administration, your principals, your teachers to want to listen to your lending ear. So it's just very important, and I just want to drill home that advocacy is very important when it comes to your child. This is their future. No one knows them better than you, and no one can tell them or maybe breathe that life into them as much as their parents can. I think everyone can attest to a moment where they did something very well, and their parent or their guardian emphasized that and help nurture that, and it helped you create a better um result for whatever your thing was. You passed the test, you did great in sports, you joined a club. Like those things should be championed, right? So advocacy matters. And what does it mean? So we're kind of talking about it, but sometimes we might not know the definitions or the words and how they play. So just a very brief definition on the left. What does it mean? It means to be a supporter or stand up for someone who can't do it alone. So there's advocates in many different areas and many different facets, but today we're just speaking in the educational realm of things, right? To champion the rights and needs and interest of the student. So excuse me, I have a brief story, and it's not really like something that's extensive, but when I was working in the high school with the special education program, there was a parent that was very, very, very heavy on advocacy. Her son had autism and Down syndrome, and he had all these wonderful traits about him that the mother did not allow her son to be marginalized or to be held back because of some of the disabilities he might have had. She advocated on his behalf to do these things, and because she did that, the school had to fall in line. The school had to provide these resources, and the school had to support. And she didn't let up, and she continued to champion his rights and what he needed and the interest that he had. So it was very wonderful to see how that worked, because in a sense, once you know your voice within the community that you're speaking to, it normally benefits all parties, not just yours, all parties involved, right? So and what does it look like in school, right? So to advocate in certain things, you can ask for copies of evaluations or drafts before the meetings are prepared and things of that nature. You have the right to ask for some of these documents, right? Educational meetings can be overwhelming as well. So if you're a parent who may be bilingual or maybe English is not your first language, you do have access to interpreters and people that can help with that information, as well as just even if you're not a person that's a speaker, you can write down your concerns and you can put it in a parent input statement, and you can give it to your educators, and you can allow them to move and function on what you're speaking on, right? Because you might not be a public speaker, you don't have to stand on tables and shake hands and make noise, but you do have to advocate in any way possible. And whatever way is comfortable for you, I'd advise that you do it, right? So strong advocacy matters both when the school is functioning well as well as when it's facing challenges, right? So I think a lot of times, or I shouldn't say a lot of times, but parents seem to be more reactive, like I said before, and I'm gonna break that down a little bit. But but advocacy isn't only when something's wrong or needs to be fixed. Advocacy is when something is going right as well. If you love the way your school does something, you can champion that. You can ask for more of it or find ways to curate a better environment for it. I think a lot of times just the word, it has a negative connotation on it that you only have to do something when something you don't like happens. But advocacy is beautiful because you have the ability to do it at all times, right? And if you're doing it at all times, good, bad, or indifferent, I think you have higher results with success, especially with your child, than if you don't do it or you only do it when it is reactive. So, um, and yeah, Connecticut schools must provide translators for parents who need one during IEP meetings, individualized education program meetings. They're required to do so. So, with that information, you have the ability to ask for those things. So, don't feel inferior or as if you don't want to ask questions. There's a lot of times where parents are very shy to use their voice, but everybody wants to win, and I think we all want our kids' future to be the brightest. So we have to advocate for ourselves. So I'm gonna break down proactive and reactive, which is it's very simple, and neither of them are negative. Neither of them have negative connotations on them, right? So I'm just gonna kind of break them down and give you an example of how they can be looked at. So proactive is developing quality relationships with the school staff, right? So not just when you feel like it's beneficial for you. You may be tired, you may be have worked a lot, but that extra conversation with the parent or the principal or the administrator or the security of the staff, just building a rapport with the people who work and serve your child is more important, and that is very proactive, right? Learning how the public school system works, spending time just going through the handbook and just knowing what the school provides and some of the information that we have the internet, which is a beautiful tool, and it's been a tremendous help for a lot of different parents and educators just getting information. So please feel free to learn more about it, and then you have a better idea. And knowledge is power. So once you know more, you're able to do more, right? So anticipate the need. So if you know your child needs something or they're lacking something, instead of waiting for it to become an issue, you can anticipate what can help put them in the best predicament. If you know your child has he might stem or he or she might have something they like to pace, any type of thing that could be seen as a interrupter in an education setting. Figure out and anticipate how you can help that child be a lot more successful in their day-to-day life at school. And that's where coordinating and having communication with your educators is very important. Focusing on prevention, just focusing on again anticipating what needs to happen, right? Those are all proactive traits that are very helpful. Reactive looks like addressing academic concerns. So it is not bad to address academic concerns. It's just more of a reactive piece to it, right? Responding to disciplinary actions when people are calling about your son or your daughter is doing this or she's refusing to do that, right? Now we have to respond and now we have to put a plan in. Again, it's not a bad thing, but I do think it is reactive. You're responding to the action that already had happened versus preventing it or putting systems in place to help heighten their success, right? Intervening on situations of bullying, and challenging unfair policies, right? So this one's kind of important because it can be seen when I first started reading it and I was doing some research. I was trying to figure out why it was reactive, right? But the fact of the matter is you're if the policies are created and you know what the policies are beforehand, then you shouldn't have to wait for it to be a disservice, have a disservice for your child to start challenging it. We talked about advocacy works when it's well, it works when it's bad, right? So if you have an issue or something that you're curious about, feel free to elaborate on that. Feel free to express that. You don't have to wait until it becomes a detriment to your child to address it. So that's why it's reactive. And just an example, I thought this was pretty cool. And so it just talks about advocacy, right? And this what proactive looks like, right? So in this picture, we have a fire. So just think about a house fire, right? And no, it doesn't apply to everything, but proactive looks like taking preventative measures, right? Fireproofing your house, making sure you have things in place so the likelihood of a fire happening won't burn down your house. It might take a portion of it, it might take the basement, but you're fireproofing your house to minimize the risk and create a better environment. Reactive looks like what we have on the right, where no, this is out of your control. And obviously this is in a kitchen somewhere, right? But this is obviously out of your control once the fire has started, but if the systems aren't in place to prevent that fire, it can get out of control. So, because a fire happens, you're making a phone call is more reactive than having the measures set. So, if a fire does happen, you can take care of it and you won't have to call the guys up top. So, just something to kind of put it in layman's terms as far as how advocacy works. Both aren't bad, right? If you're calling, I would hope you call when there's a fire in your house, right? Or something is going wrong. I would hope you call the people that are meant to be there to protect you. But if you could prevent those people ever having to come and intervene, then you're doing a great job. So just keep that in mind when we're talking about um, advocacy and proactiveness. And here's I found this interesting. And again, I have all the links of everything at the end, and I can send it to whoever needs it. But um, in 2020, this is 2023 to 2024, but I was reading in from 2023 to or 2022 to 2023, the chronic absenteeism in Connecticut was at 20%, and this past year it dropped to 17%. Before COVID, it was around 10%. So it's fluctuated. It seems to be coming back down, but it's just important to realize that the correlation between an environment in school where the kid doesn't feel safe, he or she doesn't feel advocated for, they don't feel represented. Those are normally reasons, along with a few others, and there's different. It's not a one size fits all type of thing, but they attribute to why students might not feel as comfortable. And you can kind of go through. We have the percentages here on the side where it has the ethnicities as well as some of the disabilities of the students that end up having um absentee or higher absence in school. And if you look here to the right, it's kind of interesting that emotional disabilities, people who are farly more upset and have more things to process emotionally, end up being absent majority of the time. Just something to keep in mind. And like I said, not one size fits all, but I do believe that if you're advocating for your child and you understand what's going on in your school, in their school, it would help create some of these problems or reduce some of these problems. So if you have a child that doesn't like school or doesn't feel comfortable, or maybe they're getting bullied or things of that nature, it may be time for you to step in and advocate for them so they have a safe environment and a safe space. So, here's some of your rights as an advocate, parent or guardian, right? We have the special education rights. And under the IDEA, so the Individuals with Disability Education Act, parents can advocate for appropriate accommodations and services for their child. This is huge and important for all students, for all children, because we may not know, or as a parent, we may not know if our child has any special needs or things or accommodations. And if we do know them, sometimes we don't feel comfortable with reaching out to ask for those things. You might feel like you're asking for too much, but there's never too much when it comes to your child. And advocating for accommodations that they might need, services they might need. They might need a speech pathologist. They might need occupational therapists. These are things under this act, the IDEA Act, you can advocate for. You might need a translator. You might need these things, and you have the ability to ask for them. So no question is a dumb question, and you should never feel like you don't have the support of the school. Unfortunately, some schools may not provide all these things or may not be forthright of providing all these things, but you have, as an advocate, have to understand your rights and understand what you can ask for. And you can definitely ask for accommodations and services for your child, especially if they need them. Educational equity and civil rights. So under the Chef versus O'Neill lawsuit, it advocates for equal educational opportunities in Connecticut, ensuring students, especially in Hartford, receive fair access to quality education. Students have the ability to access fair and equitable education, equal education. All right. Just because you go to a school in a different community does not mean if you want better for your child, you have the right to ask for that. You have the right to advocate for those things. It may be a process to get it done, but you have the absolute right to do so. So please, please, if you don't take anything from this, just understand that your voice is more important than you know and understand. And without it, your child will often be misrepresented. Um, so access to information, like I mentioned earlier, you have access to your child's individualized education plan, right? Parents can request and receive their child's school records and educational evaluations to ensure the proper support. Um, this next one is big to the right, legal advocacy. So if you feel like your child is not receiving the proper services, you can seek legal assistance if you disagree with school policies or disciplinary actions that affect your child. If you feel like your child is being wrongfully done within your school, you have the right to ask for those things, and you have the right to seek representation that will help bring your mind at ease with some of those things. Educational advocacy, same thing as far as parents and IEPs, individualized education programs. Um, you have the right to be included in those meetings. Um, you have all you like again, these are they're tying into each other. The main point of just your rights as an advocate is that you have the right to ask. um no question is a dumb question, right? And there's also statewide support organizations, like CPAC, right? And there's a few others that I have listed. I think it's in the next slide. um but these are just important things to note and just to keep in mind. So your rights, right? So navigating school procedures, as we spoke about, know your rights, right? Know what you can and can't do. There's always, like, again, you can reach out to legal representation to make sure if you're, if you need help, if what you're asking is something that can't be done, but know your rights. Find ways to know more information, right? And if you disagree with something, or you want to know more about something, or you want to help, or you want to advise, or you want to give more information, to request meetings with your teachers or your principals or your supervisors, superintendents. Request meetings to get the answers that you want or to get the solutions that you want. You have every right to do so. So please feel free to make sure you're doing that. Don't feel like you're asking too much, and don't feel like you're being a burden, because you're not. Document everything. This is super important, especially if you have a dispute with your schools, or if you have an issue with the schools. Make sure you're taking note of these things. Make sure you have every single paper trail that you have to help support how you feel, to support your arguments, to support just what you believe and what you want for your child. Advocacy is talking, but it's also making sure you have the files and you have everything to provide for your child. If you're, for example, if children are supposed to be you need 15 or 30 minutes a week of occupational therapy, and you don't see it within your child, it's not happening, or you're asking your child about it, they're not speaking about it, then document these things. you have to keep track of this stuff because no one's going to care for your child like you, right? And last but not least, the most important part to all of this is building relationships like we spoke about. Just build those relationships with teachers, parents, faculty members of all sorts. It can only benefit you in the long run, right? So here's some resources that I have for our parents. So I'm not going to click on them now, but you have the CPAC, right? It's a nonprofit organization that supports families of children with disabilities or chronic illnesses from birth to 26. And they provide training, support, and empowerment for parents in navigating in the education system. So this is huge. If you have questions, you want to know more about advocacy, because this is just a seed, right? You want to know more, you want to get deeper. How could you be more involved? Go to this website and they have everything that will help you navigate that, and they will be able to help you. We spoke about legal advocacy, right? So the Center for Children's Advocacy is the largest nonprofit law firm in the Northeast and is dedicated to protecting the legal rights of Connecticut children. This is important. This is important. This is important if sorry. All right, sorry about that. This is important if you have a dispute or you have some type of issue with what's going on in your children's school. All right, the largest nonprofit, the Center for Children's Advocacy, the Office of the Child Advocate. So it monitors and evaluates public and private agencies responsible for children's protection, ensuring policies safeguard children rights. So this is important as well. Like these are all in Connecticut, so they're all accessible to you. You have the AFCAMP Advocacy for Children, right? And it supports African and Caribbean American parents of children with disabilities. It offers resources and advocacy services. So if you need to know more, if you want to know more and you're maybe of the Caribbean descent or the African descent and you feel more comfortable going to organizations like these, please seek them out. They're here for you. They're here for your benefit, all right? You have Favor. It's a statewide family organization serving family, children's, and youth dealing with behavioral and mental health needs, right? So if you like again, like all these services are here for your children and for your advocacy. So please don't feel like you're unheard or unseen because these things were literally created for parents. Um, and then you have the Autism Services and Resources Connecticut, and it provides advocacy for families and children with autism. And last but not least, right, we want to make sure we're taking action, right? So advocacy is an ongoing journey, right? So it's not one of those things where it's Dan, you do it one day and you don't do it the next. It's a process, it's a journey. So if you're starting out on day one and you don't know where to go, that's fine because you can always build on it because it is for your child and it's also for your own information. If you wanted to have more children or if you wanted to pass this information along to family members or friends or another, parents who may not know, or you can start your own clubs. These notes are here for you to understand, right? So each step forward is an important step in the right direction. As long as you're making a step, making attribution, it will benefit you and your child's future tremendously. Your voice matters. I keep saying it, but I want you guys to really hear it and understand where I'm coming from. Speaking on my own personal experience working within the school system, when I first started working within the school system, I didn't understand how important my voice was. So I wouldn't speak up on certain things and I would see things and I wouldn't advocate. But the longer I've been in schools and working within the school system, I found that the worst thing that could happen to me for speaking up for a child is someone being mad that I spoke up for a child. Someone being upset that I spoke up for someone who needed it. Your voice matters. It's very important. Every conversation, every record of your engagement can help and attribute to positive change. We all want to see our children grow and flourish into great human beings. So taking that action and understanding that your voice is important, it's powerful, and it matters, can help with your part, with doing your part and taking action, right? And the last one is join forces. You don't have to necessarily create clubs or do these things, but encouraging encourage forming alliances with other parents, for something you may understand, a parent may not, and vice versa. So you want to just make sure, if you have a united voice, if you have a voice, unite that voice with other parents that believe and align with the same things that you do, right? And it helps the world go around. It helps our schools be a lot safer. Our children are a lot happier. They're a lot more confident. They want to be in school. They have positive experiences. So when 20 years from now, they can look back and say that they truthfully enjoyed being in school because of the support that they had to be themselves. That's what we want at the end of the day. When you know you have not only your parents, but other parents and family members and the faculty members, and you know that they're all fighting and scrapping for you to get the best out of your education, that is the most important part of of our advocacy, is seeing them being able to get what they need out of it. So on the last slide here, I just have a bunch of quotes that I found just to kind of make everyone feel good, make the parents feel inspired after hearing this. But the one with Rod Page was very important. There's no more powerful there's no more powerful advocate than a parent armed with information and options. Um, as a parent, if you know what's going on, it's so powerful. You're gonna change your child's life, and they might not thank you, right? They might not they might not know the battles that you're going to for them, but at the end of the day, it's going to create a better situation for them and more happiness within you and your family in the home, right? Um, our lives begin our lives begin to end the day we become silent about the things that matters. And I'll leave that one there, just because it's a Martin Luther King Jr. quote, for MLK, right? So if we begin to stay silent on the things that matter to us, then the purpose and the shift that we're here for, and what we're here to do, and the change we're here to create, can be halted, right? So in the end, just make sure, if you don't know how to advocate for your child, like I said, there's plenty of information out there where you're able to do it. You can start by speaking to your teacher. You can start by speaking to your administrator. You can start by speaking to the principal or anybody within the school system. You can start there and building that foundation and relationship. So, um, that's what I have for you guys today. I like to thank everyone who's here listening, and thank you very much. All right. Let me remove the spotlight. Sorry. All right, Miss Drakes, you work in the school system. Hold on one second. Hold up.